Hello, BookTube. It's time for my April reading plan. I'm going to start with manga and then move on to poetry and history and biography at the end. So let's get started because there's a lot. Um, so every month in 2025, I am rereading a completed manga series, both a series that has finished its run and I have collected all of the volumes. So for April, I'm picking Alice in Borderland by Hiro Aso. Alice in Borderland is inspired by Alice's adventures in Wonderland. It's about a young man named Arasu who really doesn't know what to do with his life as he ends his high school career. One day he and his friends are walking a deserted street in Tokyo when they wish that they were somewhere else. It is at that moment that a fireworks display starts to go off, building in intensity until Arasu and his friends are enveloped in light. When they come to, Arasu and his friends discover that they are in an abandoned, ruined Tokyo. Over the course of that day, they explore this new Tokyo, and in the evening, they discover that a temple has electricity and it is decorated as if for a festival. Arasu and his friends go to the festival and eat a little bit when they meet another young woman. And she is a bit chagrined when she meets them, and suddenly the venue is surrounded by a laser fence. And so Arasu and his friends must play their first death game in Borderland. Borderland is a weird, abandoned, post-apocalyptic Tokyo in which the players, the immigrants to this Tokyo, must play death games in order to maintain their residency. The games are organized via the suits of cards, difficulty, and then the kind of game. And the difficulty, say you're playing a Four of Clubs game. Well, once you clear that game, you have 4 days on your visa. If you don't play a game and your visa runs out, you get a laser to the head. If you don't clear a game, you die or get a laser to the head. And so Arasu has to figure out what's going on. What is this place? How do I get back home? Alice in Borderland is a really fun series to read. I read it early last year and quite enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to another reread or a reread. So that's the big project for April. I'm also hoping to get to my March pre-orders sometime this week. So every month I put in pre-orders for forthcoming manga in a series that I am actively collecting with Book People, the great bookstore in Austin, Texas. Sometimes my monthly pre-orders will come in at the end of that month, but usually my pre-orders will come in at the beginning of the next month, as they are this month. So I'm expecting my pre-orders to come in by at least Wednesday. The USPS is expecting delivery on Wednesday, although the tracking seems to be a bit wonky because by this point my order should have left Austin and either in transit to Fort Worth or should actually be in Fort Worth by this point. But over the last few months, the USPS has been very wonky in its tracking. Not very happy about that. But the 5 pre-orders I'm expecting to come in are Dead Rock Volume 1 by Hiro Mishima, Demons of the Shadow Realm Volume 7 by Hiromu Arakawa, The Summer Hikaru Died Volume 5 by Moku Mokuren, Dark Gathering Volume 12 by Kenichi Kondo, and Jujutsu Kaisen Volume 25 by Gege Akutami. So once they come in, I will read them hopefully Thursday and Friday of this week. If not, I'm going to be kind of crabby when I have to figure out how to fit them in elsewhere. I'm also hoping to read some more volumes of One Piece by Eiichiro Oda. Bleach by Tite Kubo. Sakamoto Days by Yuto Suzuki. And Twin Star Exorcist by Yoshiaki Tsukino. Although I'm a bit uncertain about this one. I read the first 9 volumes last week, and I'm not entirely sure what I make of the series. I'm going to do a separate video. Hopefully I could do a weekly reads to cover the manga I've read last week and early this week, or to wrap up March. Then I'm not entirely sure. There are things about this series that I like. There are some things I'm not particularly fond of, and I'm just not connecting with it as well as I would like. So I need to think a bit more about that before I continue on with Volume 10. And of course, there would be other manga that I would like to get to as well, both that I've just been hanging around or that will be coming in, depending how many manga hauls I pull off in this month. Now, conservatively, I think I'm probably going to devote, if I decide to focus on a lot of this, that my manga reading will be probably 18 to 20 days worth, which gives me only 10 to 12 days of not manga to read. And I have 2 big piles of other things I also would like to get to, so I'm not entirely sure how this is going to work out at all. Before I get to the poetry, I do want to address Aussie April. Every year, I would love to participate in Aussie April. It is a booktube event in April in which participants read Australian literature. Every year, I want to participate. Unfortunately, I don't have a deep bench of Australian literature, currently only 5. 3 volumes of poetry and 2 novels. I would like to expand that. And I do have 4 possibilities that I was wanting to talk about. But again, maybe that should be a separate video. But the 4 are, if I can remember them correctly, The Vivisector by Patrick White, Praiseworthy by Alexis Wright, The Burrow by, I'm blanking on her name, and Theory and Practice by Michelle de Crester. I'm not entirely sure if I will add them to my collection or just one or a few of them. I'm trying to build up a haul that's not manga, and it's not quite working out. So anyway, now moving on to poetry. So a month or 2 ago, they come later. There was a booktube tag where you would select 10 big books that you would like to get to. And 2 of those books were volumes of poetry. SOS by Amiri Baraka, and the selected poetry of Robinson Jeffers. So my idea with both of these books would have been to slowly read them rather than sit down and read them over the course of a few days. I would read them interspersed with other things so that I don't get too bogged down with them. But I only have about 10 to 12 days, so I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to get to either one. I'm thinking I might hold off on SOS until later, because I really do want to get to Robinson Jeffers at some point. So maybe I should prioritize this for my not manga reading in April. But I also had the insane idea of having some kind of tournament with these volumes of poetry. Or select one or two poets from this pile and just read all of their work that I have. Which is also an option, particularly since I am today and tomorrow at least, I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to read. So could I play around with this? Would make more sense if I had it like this, or a few of these and then put the rest of them up. I don't exactly know. Now let's put these guys back up. Ooh. And I'm not going to go through all of them. Now, April begins the next quarter of Historathon, a booktube event that takes place over the course of a year, created by Vin of Revenant Reads, in which participants read history throughout the year, and is divided into 4 quarters. Initially, it's about a few thousand years worth length. It's basically the beginning of history to 500, and then 500 to 1500 in the second quarter, and then 1500 to 1820 something, or 1820 in the third quarter, and then 1820 to the present. So the times shrink as the year goes on. And so I was thinking for this month, finally having a go at Crusaders by Dan Jones. So this is a history of the Crusades. I've been meaning to get to this for a while, and probably should try to get to it soon. Put you there. Also, in April is People April, which is a booktube event devoted to biographies, which is created by Elizabeth of Bookends and Books and Roz of Scallydandling About the Books. And so for People April, I would like to get to, I'm thinking about maybe Matilda by Catherine Hanley, Four Queens by Nancy Goldstone, and Elizabeth I by Anne Somerset. Also, going back to that video about big books, there's also Grant by Ron Chernow. I've been meaning to get to Chernow for a while. So that's a lot, and I don't have many days to figure out what I want to do. So how am I going to do this booktube? Because if I did, so Grant would probably take me theoretically the whole of it. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is I think I'll do some slim volumes of poetry today. So let's see here. Let's move you over. I think maybe for at least the first and 2nd of April, I might do 2 of these 3. She Heads into the Wilderness by Mary McCarry, The View from Saturn by Alice Freeman, and Larvae of the Near Stars by Catherine W. Carter. Could work. Or maybe I could also throw in Hosts and Guests by Nate Klug. And then hold off on Robinson Jefferson until later in the month. And then still try to get to Crusaders by Dan Jones. Grant will just have to wait a bit. So let's go put him back where he belongs. And I think maybe 4 Queens by Nancy Goldstone. So let's put Lizzie back where she belongs with her second Elizabeth, and Victoria and Matilda over here. One of these days I need to really rearrange my history collection in a bit more sensible fashion. But I think that can work. But as always with my reading plans, things are subject to change depending on how things turn out. Because very often my plans don't quite survive the actual reading. So anyway, BookTube, I will be back tomorrow with either a long overdue response video dealing with comic books, or weekly reads that will largely wrap up the last 2 weeks of March. So anyway, BookTube, until I see you next time, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe.